Okay, I think we're good. As Paulina alluded, 14 times implies that here we are at our 14th community task force meeting, which is hard to believe. I'm tracking task force meetings along with the school year, which is now week 13, and I'm terrified and in awe and surprised that we've survived 13 weeks of kindergarten lessons at home. I'm sure many people are feeling similarly, and hopefully today's task force conversation is maybe at least a respite from that. But just a quick reminder, as we're all safely socially distanced, mixing and mingling with friends and family and community members in West Seattle, as we're now transitioning into this next phase. We have a decision from the mayor, yet still many questions. We really are focused on responding and getting back to folks who have questions. And the best way to ask the most specific to the most broad question that anyone has is to send us an email at West Seattle Bridge, all one word, West Seattle Bridge @seattle.gov. And we will get back to you, and we work very hard to be timely and thorough in those responses. So if you're getting a lot of questions, you can direct them to us instead of having to try and come up with the answers. But for anybody else listening, West Seattle Bridge @seattle.gov is a wonderful way to be in touch, and we do try and get back to folks thoroughly and in a timely fashion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our task force co-chairs, and I think Pauline's going to kick us off with a little introduction, and then Mayor Nichols will give us a little bit of a forecast on what's ahead for this afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Paulina?
Thank you, Michael.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. We haven't seen each other in a week, so I just wanted to have an opportunity, as we are in this mode of thankfulness, to thank you once again for your commitment and for all the work that you do in the communities that you represent on these task forces. Being invaluable to have your support, your ideas, and your wisdom, and we want to continue making sure that we bring all this information as a whole, as together in a group, because we still have some years to go through together and to make the best out of it. And now that we have a decision, to make sure that voices keep on being heard, etc. So thank you once again for being with us in our meeting. I'm going to pass it on to my super co-chair, Greg, who is very proud sounder this morning. Looks like, is that a soundard? Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah.
So welcome, Greg, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, Paulina. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. It was different, I'm sure, than what we're all used to, but I know in our case, our family were very thankful for many things this year. So I hope you and your family enjoyed the holiday as well. Now that you've had this little break, couple weeks, we're back at it. Today's meeting is not a real intense meeting in terms of looking at cost benefit analysis, or should we replace or repair, but it's more to kind of set the stage for the next few months, and allow us to be able to continue to advise the mayor and continue to advise our communities as to what is going on as they're struggling with the impacts on their lives. We'll be able to give them good information, accurate information, and hopefully timely information. So that's what today's agenda is focused on. We're going to have a brief update on the bridge itself, the low-level bridge, the high-level bridge, the reconnecting conversation and the like. Then we're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about your reaction to the process and the result of our earlier work with the mayor's decision to go with the repair path. Get your feedback on and what you're hearing out in the community about that. We then will have a conversation after that discussion about the Reconnect West Seattle, the implementation of that. And then finally, we'll have a discussion amongst ourselves around the next steps. Where do we go from here? What is our role? What do we need to be able to fulfill that role? And to, I guess, tee that one up a little bit, I wanted to let you know I've asked SDOT for kind of 3 tools that we might be able to use to fulfill our role effectively. One of those is to get a critical path schedule. It doesn't exist yet, but we do know that there are certain things that are going to happen in a certain order and by a certain time for us to keep the promise of a mid-2022 reopening of the bridge. So as we get more information, as we get further down the development of the design, we'll be able to fill in that. And again, that should give us a tool to be able to see early if we're not making those marks, if the schedule is at risk, if you will. Secondly, I asked SDOT to develop for us a monthly summary of trends in traffic flow. So Britain just approved the first COVID vaccine. It's the Pfizer one, I believe. That's going to happen quickly here in the US, and we'll have lots of conversations publicly about how that gets distributed. But ultimately, that's going to mean that more people will feel able to venture forth, go back to workplaces perhaps, and increase traffic volume. So if we can watch those trends, we can have sort of an early look at whether there are problems popping up that we hadn't anticipated, and perhaps need some response. And then third, I asked SDOT to help us begin a conversation about additional mitigation. We're going to hear today from Sarah about the Reconnect West Seattle and the all of those projects for 2020 and 2021, the mobilization plan and the like. But there are still pieces that have been suggested or pieces that have been looked at that we haven't really had time to focus on. Now we will have time to be able to do that. So again, when we get to the discussion, if you could raise your hand virtually on that little doohickey, I think that's the technical term for it. If you need to use chat, that's fine, though we would encourage the raising of the hand would be preferable. And when you do speak, if you could just say your name and if you feel affiliation is appropriate, that will allow those who are watching our meeting to be able to identify all of us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather. She's going to give us an update on the bridge, all bridge things. Heather?
Hi, team. Welcome back, everyone. I'll just echo everyone's wishes that we all had a good Thanksgiving celebration. Happy to be back with you and let you know what's the latest on the bridge. Can we have the next slide, please? Great. So here are a couple of pictures. The first one is a picture from underneath the bridge showing 2 work platforms that are suspended under the bridge, surrounded by the carbon fiber wrap. This is the wrap that the crews have recently installed. And if you're far below, it looks like stripes. The second picture is what the carbon fiber looks like on the floor of the box girder inside the girder. And you may recall that we're doing most of the work inside those box girders. We've installed all of the stabilization post-tensioning and installed another layer of carbon fiber wrap after bringing the post-tensioning up to 100%. Next slide, please. So now that we're just about done with all of that stabilization work and the mayor has made a decision to proceed with repair, we need to move forward. And so the repair work is going to build on the phase 1 stabilization. Design is underway. The repairs that we have installed thus far are completed and performing well. We need to continue to monitor those repairs through the colder temperatures. Just like we learned in Introduction to Physical Science, things expand and contract based on temperature. And so we want to see if those cracks open back up. And if they open up, do they open up farther? We also need to complete a study that models is probably a strong word, but examines how likely other parts of the bridge are to need future repairs before the bridge is eventually replaced. I think we have a draft of that document, and it's on my list to read here in the next day or so. As part of our second phase of repair, we're going to add additional post-tensioning and carbon fiber reinforced polymer to the other bridge spans. So we've thus far just been working on the center span. So the repair is going to involve more post-tensioning and carbon fiber on that center span and on the tail spans, the spans on either side of that center span. We're going to install additional instrumentation and health of the system, not health of human bodies, to the new repairs. One of the reasons why that's really important is not just because obviously we want to make sure that the repairs are continuing, but carbon fiber reinforced polymer can get very brittle. And so we want early warning to know if we're having that brittle reaction, because the very last thing we want to have happen with that carbon fiber reinforced polymer is for a piece of it to fall into the river. It's not heavy, it won't hurt anyone, but it's not good for it's not good for the ecosystem. We also need to review the seismic condition of the Pier 18 foundation to identify whether or not we need to proceed more immediately with seismic improvements. So we're working on the design and permitting right now. Like I said, the construction will likely be underway by fall of 2021, and we plan to be open to traffic in 2022. Next slide, please. So we plan to hire a contractor using what to us is an alternative delivery method called General Contract Construction Manager. You'll hear that abbreviated as GCCM. This procurement process is underway now. We need to get special permission from some internal boards as required by the state. Once we get to 30% design, that's when we'll go out to add and bring that contractor on board to work with SDOT and our design contractor to go through the 60 and 90% design process to make sure that we can move forward expeditiously and that there are no constructability issues. The key benefits for GCCM are the ability to engage the contractor early. That really helps. It helps us identify the schedule and cost savings, as well as higher predictability of schedule and cost projections. And it gives us the ability to develop sequencing plans that reflect what, in this case particularly, is an exceptionally complex environment. I'm going to pause and see if anybody has any questions about that process. Our normal process is called design, bid, build. So we design the whole thing to 100%, we put it all together, and then we put it out on the street for contractors to bid on, and then we hire a contractor and they build it. This is a much more collaborative process.
Heather, I guess I don't see any hands up, but one of the questions that I'm being asked is if there will be any possibility for some local jobs generating through this process. So it would be great to talk if you see the possibility, and especially locals, I mean, by the community impacted. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm not actually the expert in the details of that, but yes, this is a great opportunity not only to hire a local general contractor, but also to make sure that the subs who are working there are going to draw from the local community. Is Greg Izzo here? If he's here, he can be more specific about that.
Yes, Heather, I am here. This is Greg Izzo. Thank you, everyone. It's a good question. We are pursuing federal funds for the repair contract. And if we do so, there are some limitations on making sure we follow the federal requirements around disadvantaged business enterprise opportunities, because they set their own goals and requirements for that. So we're working with our Finance and Administrative Services department to see if there's a way we can work in our community workforce agreement or some form of that community workforce agreement into a federally funded project. In the past, we've struggled a little bit, but we still feel there's an opportunity to get a second go at this and make a case to implement part of our CWA goals. So we are definitely going to push hard and do our best to try to drive that through. But it is federally funded, and we are setting it up that way. And so that's one of the challenges we'll just have to work through.
Absolutely. I want to note that there are a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll read them out loud and answer them if that's acceptable. Diane Sosney wonders what month in 2022 the repaired bridge will be open. Diane, I wish I knew, but we're a little bit too early to make that prediction right now. And I would hate to make a prediction and then be wrong. That would be terrible. And our plan is to not open the bridge until it has full capacity, all lanes in both directions. Deb, for what other projects we've used GCCM on? I think we used it on the seawall. Greg, can you think of others?
That is correct. We used it on the seawall and also the recent Overlook Circle on the waterfront. That contract also used GCCM.
Okay, great. It is, I'll tell you that it's not a new concept, but it is new to SDOT. We feel like it has some real opportunities for efficiencies. So that's really great. Diane Sosney also wonders how much we're asking for in federal funds. Well, we'd like to get, something along the lines of a third of the project funded by federal money. And keep in mind that that $47 million number that the mayor mentioned is just a part of, that's the repair cost. That's not, that doesn't include any of the mitigations or low bridge improvements that we need to make. Lisa Herbold wonders how much time GCCM will save. Greg, do you have a good answer there?
We're estimating GCCM will probably save us around 4 to 6 months right now. That's our estimation.
Great. Okay, great. I just want to remind everyone that I think we're trying not to ask questions in the chat. So I'm sorry if I encourage that behavior, but maybe raise your hand. Oh, look, Joe McDermott has a question. Oh, no, he doesn't. He says it's used increasingly and successfully. The WashDOT does use it a lot. That's absolutely true. Okay.
Heather, can you repeat that question so everybody can, who is not reading in the chat?
It wasn't a question, it was a comment. He says that GCCM is used increasingly and successfully. I'm saying that WashDOT uses it a lot these days. And Councilmember McDermott points out that often in his experience, Sound Transit, among other places. So why don't we move on to the next slide, just for funsies. So next year and early in 2022, we are going to be focusing on the high bridge repair. You may recall that the low bridge also needs strengthening, and so we'll be working on that in the same time frame. We will be moving forward with Reconnect West Seattle implementation and a focus on managing detour traffic. It's what we've been doing since March, and we're going to continue to do that until the high bridge is back open. We're working on the mobility action plan to provide, advertise, and incentivize travel options. We want to make sure that folks are really looking for ways other than using their car to travel to and from West Seattle. This benefits the communities where the detour passes and also your travel plans, because I will tell you that as people start going back to work, we simply cannot replace the capacity that we had for cars with some, signal retiming. We will be delivering frequent updates and maintaining project transparency as we go on. You all are a very key part of that. We're also evaluating alternatives for future replacement. We're going to start on an alternatives analysis, which is the first step for that type, size, and location study you've been hearing so much about. Originally, if we had gone with the replacement option, that TSNL study would have been really super compressed into like a 12-week process. Now that we have a little bit more time, we're going to have a little bit more normal process there. So more like a year. We're also exploring strategies to increase redundancy of travel options into and out of West Seattle. And of course, continuing to identify current and future funding sources for repair and replacement, my very favorite thing. Next slide, please. So another really key part of what we're doing here is ongoing community engagement. We're going to continue to brief anyone, anytime, anywhere. So if you have a group that would like to hear from me or someone on the team, just let us know. We're going to continue working with South Park, Highland Park, and Georgetown communities to plan pedestrian safety and speed reduction projects. We're going to continue outreach to gather feedback on proposed West Marginal Way Southwest improvements. And of course, our friends at Department of Neighborhoods, they're members of the team. And so we're going to use their community liaison program and people to engage our neighbors in language. And we're also, of course, going to continue to engage with you all, the Maritime Town Hall, and the Employer Resource Group. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll turn it back.
Thanks, Heather. And then I just want to make sure we before we pivot to the next round that we were able to address folks' questions before we get too far away in the slides. And you touched on some of these briefly, but Diane Sosney asking what month in 2022 would Repaired Bridge be open, and just affirming that remains a question mark as we go through the design process and witnessing the thermal cycle. But if there's anything else you want to add to there, and then question about the size of the federal partnership and funding being sought, which again is early days, but I just wanted to say those out loud so everyone heard them. And if there's any additional nuance you wanted to tack on there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Heather. Looks like we covered most of the questions, and now we transition into a discussion for our task force. And we have prepared some questions here based on what we would love to hear from you. We're interested in hearing from task force members. What is the feedback that you're getting from community? How are the people in your community responding to the news of the repair decision from Mayor Durkin? And also, what are the things that you're mostly interested in learning about the repair as we move forward? As very important to be intentional in how do we keep engaged the community that we represent, the communities, and what type of updates we need to give, or in what format. All these will be great to hear, and maybe we can not have this screen here to have an opportunity to see each other, but I'm going to ask Bill if he would be kind to please post they were there already on the chat. So this would be a great time for us to interact and hear from each other. And, just to model a little bit of, I think a lot of people is feeling at good ease that a decision has been made. And now it's the anxiety of when, is it going to be open again? But there's a lot of work that needs to happen in between. So, how do we make the best out of this time and to support our communities? Anybody would like to start? And we can use the hand raise button. I don't see so far. Oh, I see Deb Barker. Thank you, Deb.
I'm sorry to always be first, but I did my homework. So hi, everybody. Good to see you all. Just want to say, nice to see friendly faces again. I've been hearing A lot what you just said. I've been hearing absolute relief that a decision was made. I've had people, it's unusual for men to cry. I'm just going to make that sweeping generalization, but I did have someone who was so close to tears expressing relief of the decision. So I've had no tears, some tears. I've also heard, yeah, we can do 2 years. I'm like, okay, great. But along with that, I've heard absolute terror, dread, fear of this, the 2 years post-COVID while the bridge is still closed. So dread, terror, relief, and tears. That's what I've been hearing.
Deb, let me ask you this, and thank you so much for sharing. Have you also heard what will be one of the things that community is interested in learning through these years moving forward, or what should be working on to keep them
Absolutely. I have that written down too. I think we're interested in timing and timing and timing. And that's a really tough one because it's still, you just can't put the July 2nd, 2022. You can't say that out loud. There's nothing to say out loud for timing, but that still is a huge question. And also when something, if a date is given and then it doesn't happen, like maybe some things going on right now that aren't happening. And to that end, I've written down that I think monthly updates are necessary for SDOT to schedule something regularly, monthly, even if nothing's happening, because if nothing's happening, it's still important for people to be able to have a place to go to have SDOT listen to them. And this is a wonderful format for that. So I would encourage monthly listening sessions if it is, or updates, but that's and focus truly on the timing and listening. Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate it. And this would also be pairing up with a later discussion we would have as task force members to go in more detail as far as where do we want to go as a task force.
Absolutely.
And what are the things that we want to be addressing. So this time it was just mostly to hear back from you and what are the reactions from community and what are the things that we should be aligning exactly to bring all this type of feedback into the future. I don't see any other hand. Oh, I'm sorry. Colleen, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just raised my hand right when you said that. I'm Colleen Desmond and I live in Highland Park neighborhood. And I've heard just a little bit from friends in the area and then also from my neighborhood. I think to echo what Deb said, people are pretty relieved that the decision was made. I've had to let people know that the work has been done or is being done simultaneously before this decision was made. So we didn't lose any time. I don't think a lot of people realized that what's going on. But I think what the communities are most interested in now, from what I've heard, is just how are we going to work on this Reconnect West Seattle work? What are we going to do in the neighborhoods to mitigate the traffic and make the neighborhood safe again? And I mean, we're already starting that work, but I think now people are really gung-ho to get that work done in earnest. So that's what I'm hearing in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Colleen. And do you do agree that we should have a monthly interaction with community, bringing all the different things and updates, technical updates to them?
I agree with that.
All right, I think I see Jen Temple and then Councilmember Herbal.
Yeah, I'll just Jen Temple, and I live in Gatewood, so I've heard a lot from neighbors and through our own group at West Seattle Bridge now. I think, well, again, echoing a lot of relief, and again, echoing how are we really going to, if we're looking at potentially May, June, July, when traffic really starts getting back to some semblance potentially of normal, looking at least to date where the vaccines are heading. Given traffic is already just horrific, And there's not a lot of faith in things like people going to be getting on their bikes. What really are going to be the solutions for traffic mitigation? Because people are not going to be getting on their bikes to go to Bellevue. So, and to their doctor's appointments and to all the other kind of errands they have to run and to take their kids to work and all that kind of, or to school. So I think having more realistic ideas of traffic mitigation are the biggest concerns that I've been hearing.
Thank you, Jane. And that's definitely mirrored the same in the Duwamish Valley. There is this excitement of, yes, a decision was made. Now, what does this exactly mean once the vaccine comes, as we already see in the traffic impacts, and how we need to be providing better ways of transportation is another a conversation that I've heard ongoing. So, Councilmember Herbal.
Thank you. Just echoing what I'm hearing from folks here on this call is really consistent with what I've been hearing in my office since the decision was made. A lot of relief. The day before the decision was announced, I think I received inquiries of whether or not people should be prepared to drink whiskey or champagne. Just, weighing the impacts between a very long closure and a shorter closure that I think a lot of people feel is manageable with SDOT's continued commitment to traffic mitigation programs and active engagement around what the highest priority programs are. I do agree that some sort of continued discussion and engagement, a place for people to go beyond just my office hours would be I think very, very useful for the public as a way of not just engaging, but sharing information. And just want to highlight that I am now, getting sort of more focused questions about the repair pathway now that that decision has been made. I submitted some questions before the decision was made, and I've resubmitted them because there are questions that keep coming up, and they kind of fit in the categories of the cost of the repair, questions about the life cycle of the repair, and questions specifically related to the length of time to complete the repair and whether or not there are other things that we can be doing to expedite them. So have resubmitted those questions to SDOT in the effort to recognize that there is increased interest in the details around repair now that decision has been made.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Herbal. And I'm sure you will get the response from our colleagues from SDOT, and we would love to also learn from what you learn on those questions. We're gonna go with Ann Higuera, followed by Greg Nichols, and then Laura Radford.
Hi, this is Ann Higuera. I would like to echo what Deb said about making sure that communication happens regularly, and not just about progress, but about ways to leave the peninsula. Just the other night, I was looking at the West Seattle blog, and there were a lot of questions from people about what are the rules for the low bridge? Nobody knows what they are. They were all confused. They had the times wrong. They didn't know how anybody arrived at those times. There was just a lot of confusion about it. And I'm just not sure that the signage, if there's enough signage to really direct people. And then I guess the other thing is I had not really left the peninsula to do much until yesterday and the day before, when I drove all over town picking up stuff to finish up a project for work. And both times the bridge went up. And there was a huge backup, along Michigan and in and out of there. I don't know if there's a way to push marine traffic to off hours or do something about that, but that was something that came to my attention 2 days in a row, was that there I was, and there the bridge was up. And so I think providing a forum for people to be able to provide ongoing feedback to SDOT about problem spots that are popping up or ideas that they might have would be beneficial both to SDOT and to make people feel like they're being heard. So.
Thank you, Anne. And just a reminder, this is great feedback too. There is talking about the lower bridge, there is a subgroup that is specifically focusing on that. So this is good feedback for them to hear and the community from community stakeholders. Greg?
Thank you, Paulina. Two things. One, what I've heard from folks has been very similar to what I've been hearing, that people are relieved. They're glad that there's a direction that we can follow, and that there's hope of the thing opening in a relatively short period of time. Even folks who at the beginning of the process, or even before this process, I had chatted with, who felt that replacement was really the only option. As we learned more, I think it became clear that repair was more viable than originally thought. And so folks who had that feeling that we needed to go directly to replacement thought it was a solid decision that the mayor expressed very well. The second thing is for us to be able to manage this 2 years, transit is going to have to be a very vibrant part of the solution. Transit gets to go across the low-level bridge, so it has a time advantage that it normally does not have. But obviously today with the pandemic, and particularly the levels that we're at, transit is not a good option. And it isn't something that in the very, very short run is going to help. But we need, I think, to stay on top of that, because as things open back up and it becomes safer, transit has to pick up a huge part of this load. And in some ways, transit's going to have to look different for some period of time until we do get that capacity back. So that's one of the things I think our monthly conversation should include, is what is the latest on when transit can carry more people and when we could add transit in order to pick up its share of the load. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Definitely, Greg. And we have been saying this, including Metro in the conversations for us. So perhaps it's also a good time to maybe strategically bring them back and have more in-depth conversations of what is the plan going to look like realistically. So we're going to go with Laura and then Marcy, and followed by Don Austin. So Laura, please.
Hi, I'm Laura Radford. I'm the Executive Director of the West Seattle Junction Association. And I can say on behalf of the junction merchants, there is relief. I think that is the operative word of this meeting, is relief. And the junction merchants are certainly looking forward to commerce going back and forth across not only the high bridge when it's ready to be reopened, but also continue commerce across the low bridge as well. So we have the ability to move goods back and forth between Seattle proper and West Seattle. So anyway, on behalf of the merchants and the West Seattle downtown, we were very supportive of the repair option and also the ability to move our goods back and forth across the bridges when appropriate. So thank you. Thanks for the decision.
Thank you, Marcy, and for all your support to small businesses. Marcy?
Hi, Marcy Carpenter, Admiral Resident Transit Advocate. Here, of course, a lot of the same things a lot of other people are hearing. Really want to emphasize the need for ongoing discussions about transit, especially as things do start to open up. Obviously, it has to be balanced with safety, including driver safety. But people are very interested in having more transit options, and with schedules changing, not just rush hour transit service. I think some kind of regular communication is important. interestingly, you know, I hear from a lot of my sighted friends. I'm a blind person. I hear from all of my sighted friends that, well, you know, you say you're hearing a lot about work being done. We don't see like footage of that a lot. And so maybe finding a way to show videos periodically on the news or somewhere where the general public can access them easier. And then hear from people and see a lot on discussion groups about people just saying, you know, and I know this will get addressed more when the low bridge enforcement gets put in place, but a lot of people are just saying, well, I just take the low bridge, you know. nobody's stopping me now. So just a little feedback there.
Thank you, Marcy. I appreciate your feedback. Dawn, followed by Dave in Bedstock, and we do have about 7 more minutes to go.
I'll keep it short. Dan Austin, incoming board chair of the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce. We obviously are grateful, like the Junction Association was, for small businesses that will have a shorter closure. But I do want to recognize that about half the group was shooting for a replacement. And I don't think there should be a victory lap on one half and not on the other. So for the neighborhoods that were impacted, I talked to several people in South Park and Georgetown that were more interested in not having a shutdown again later in life. I really want to encourage SDOT to work on traffic mitigation plans long-term beyond the Reconnect West Seattle, that if something happens to this bridge, that those neighborhoods aren't nearly as impacted next time that there is a shutdown. So that's not just these projects we have listed, but we continue to work with those neighborhoods and push forward in mitigation for the next time. Even if it's 20, 30 years down the road, it's never too early to plan to keep those communities moving and not being impacted and out of proportion for everyone else. The other thing is just, I really would love to see us work with Metro moving forward. I really think there's a huge need for a little bit of a reroute to be able to help get people to the light rail station in Soto, which can help get people up on the Capitol Hill and First Hill and Pill Hill for medical appointments. There needs to be some sort of quick routing to the light rail and or an express route up to Capitol Hill so they could use the light rail up there to move around the medical facilities in that neighborhood. There's pretty decent access to South Lake Union, but Councilmember McDermott might be able to help us walk through that at some point on the act it takes to make that happen. But that's, I think, really critical for both patients and essential employees.
Don, thank you so much for that and for your acknowledgement of impacted communities on the traffic. Definitely a concern that we need to be addressing in the long term because of this decision. So we're gonna adjourn it with David, this section of the agenda.
Yeah, thanks, and nice to see everyone, as others have said. You've heard this from me before, but in terms of the Reconnect West Seattle plan, in terms of what we're hearing from our communities, is a lack of affordable internet access. So in asking people to continue working from home, it's been crickets from the mayor's office about fast tracking anything out of the Internet for All report put out by the city. So I would just ask if SDOT is doing anything and encourage SDOT to be an active part of driving that conversation at the city. Comcast and CenturyLink aren't going to do anything to help. They're trying to make money. And we've got families who are choosing affordable food over affordable internet, and they are getting left behind. And I would just, again, flag the surveying that we did. We surveyed more white owning respondents than the population of West Seattle. So that was an equity fail. And I would like to see a more prioritization towards supporting vulnerable families in pursuit of the Reconnect West Seattle plan. I am happy to work with anyone there to help build bridges within the city, but would really love SDOT to.
David?
I think we need to move that forward in this age. Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
you cut out for a little bit. You got frozen, but I think we got your offer to work very closely with folks from SDOT. And I was going to say, perfect segue to hear from Sarah Sora on the Reconnect with Seattle, since this part was just devoted to the repair portion. But I would really like to encourage you having in-depth engagement with Sarah and bringing all these important issues to her and see how we can be supportive, and totally hear your points.
Great,
Thank you, David. So this would be a great segue to bring Sarah and talk about Reconnect with Seattle.
Yes, thank you so much. It's great to be here, and I hear you quite loudly and clearly. We are getting on point about the better awareness of COVID vaccination timeline, COVID recovery, and the gap of time that we're going to have between that bridge is open. So I'm here to give you a recap on what's been going on with Reconnect West Seattle. As you know, we did a big public engagement process in the summertime to really have a sense of what we have been hearing. If you can go to the next slide, Megan. So the goals, of course, are to really have a good sense of how to get similar levels of travel across the Duwamish that we had seen before the closure of the high bridge, and as well as to introduce that environmental injustice that are happening with especially the neighborhoods that are feeling the detour route impact as well. If you go to the next slide, accountability and transparency is really important to us, and I hear that from you as well. In behind the scenes, you know, we have this 2020-2021 implementation plan that came out of the public engagement. We've been creating a project dashboard. So Megan and I are going to try to see if this technology will work with Zoom to show you the project dashboard, but it does have all of the 55 projects from the 2020 and 2021 implementation plan in the map form. And if we can show it to you, yep, you'll be able to look at this map and click on a project. Either color, 2020 is a blue color, 2021 is an orange color, and really see where we are with that project. So this is a 2020 example. We had some traffic mitigation components at 16th Avenue Southwest and Southwest Holden Street. We completed those by adding different left turn lanes. And so that will just give you a snapshot of all the projects that are in the list. If you go to a 2021 project, you'll see that the status is not complete. And it will give you a little description of what that project is from the implementation plan. So in South Park, you know, we heard that there probably will be some Stay Healthy Streets implemented in 2021. So we're working, the Home Zone team is working on that right now. We just wanted to make sure you guys knew about this project dashboard because we think it's pretty cool that it's in mapping form, and it's a way for us to be held accountable as well as be quite transparent about where we are with all the projects within Reconnect West Seattle. If you go back to the slideshow, Megan, thank you for doing that, by the way. I just wanted to make it clear that Reconnect West Seattle, I think of it in a couple different elements. So we have the 2021 and 2020 and 2021 implementation plan. We also have the bucket of traffic mitigation. So what are we going to be doing on the detour routes and things like that? We also have the mobility action plan. So a lot of the information and discussion that you guys were having just now about how do we get people to move around West Seattle and through the Duwamish to get across the Duwamish River. So there's all different components that we're working on. And then of course the low bridge. So there's 4 kind of components of Reconnect West Seattle: the implementation plan, the traffic mitigation, the mobility action plan, and the low bridge, all together wrapped into one overall program. If you go to the next slide, Megan. That dashboard is public and it is live right now. There's a link in the slideshow, but it's also, if you go to our Reconnect West Seattle Bridge website, there's a link just a few lines down at the top of the webpage. So it's live now and you should go look at it. Let me know if you have any comments on it. So the next slide is just an example of some of the things we've been doing. So since the bridge has closed, we have implemented over 185 traffic mitigation projects. Some are, you know, signal timing in conjunction with the traffic, the closure and the impact. Some are different paving projects like the 5-way intersection at Chelan. We totally did over after the bridge had been closed to ensure that we have good sight lines, different pavement markings to make sure everyone knows where they should be moving and going. We've completed 17 of the 55 2020 and 2021 implementation plan projects. Some of those were like the radar feedback signs to make sure along the detour routes we really have a good understanding of people, how fast they're traveling when they have no congestion on those detour routes. We've also done some different pavement markings, especially along East Marginal Way, to really highlight the two major modes that we're dealing with out there, freight and people riding bikes, to make sure that it's well aligned and people have good eyesights on each other and visibility about where they are. I've mentioned before, we started the home zone outreach process, and we have some draft proposals already to South Park and to Georgetown. We're coming into Highland Park in the beginning of the year with some ideas to bring back to the community. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slides. Some of the things that are coming up. So we are finishing building out the 2020 projects and as well continue the detour route traffic mitigation projects. We will be talking about home zones and West Marginal Way in the next couple slides, as well as that mobility action plan. I know that I heard quite clearly the need for transit, the need to get other people to shift their modes, especially in that time frame of COVID recovery and the West Seattle High Bridge still not being open. So I'll explain a little bit about what we're doing that. We really are committing to, being here and listening to the community as often as you want us to, as frequently as possible. And we're here to adjust priorities, especially as we see things opening up post-COVID or COVID recovery time. And to really center equity is definitely an important part of the entire Reconnect West Seattle umbrella. For home zones, so the 3 home zone areas that we were focused on at this time is South Park, Georgetown, and Highland Park area, because these are the areas that are being the most impacted from the detour routes that we have initiated when the High Bridge was closed. Like we said, we have done all the community walks with the 3 different communities. They were all pretty fun, and actually quite fun for me to be face-to-face with people when we've been inside of the screen the whole time. We have had some draft proposals out to South Park and Georgetown. So internally right now, we're working on all the designs of that so that the goal is to get these projects implemented in 2021. If you go to the next page, slide, West Marginal Way. So this is something that I know the Community Task Force is quite interested in. Some upcoming information is that the Duwamish Longhouse interim signal is still on target to be delivered in 2021. And we are still working on how the roadway changes may or may not occur on West Marginal Way. So we have, we're going to be starting this targeted engagement. I'm just going to go over what this additional engagement and outreach is going to be comprised of. So we are creating a survey so that we can do more targeted outreach and engagement with direct contact along all the businesses along West Marginal Way. We heard pretty clearly from some members of the Community Task Force, like it might be nice to get out and walk the corridor with myself and Brad Topol, who's the PM of this project. And so I'm here to say, we would love to do that with you guys. And we're looking for some volunteers that might want to, interested volunteers that might want to walk with us in a COVID safe small group way to observe PM peak hour traffic and kind of discuss some of the options that we have going on right now. And so if you're interested in that, I think we can have you can send an email to Bill Aboard, and then we can see how many people are interested and see how many groups of walks we might need to do. We were hoping to get those done next week during the PM peak hour time. So that is something that if you are interested in joining us on a walk to really have a sense of what's going on with the quarter now, how people are experiencing it, how they're using it, and then some potential future about what it might look like, please let us know, and I'm going to have you reach out to Bill Aboard for that purpose. We do plan in mid-January to have a virtual workshop or an open house of some sort to get the broader community involved in what those roadway changes may or may not look like. We've been going to community briefings or monthly meetings as requested. We will be starting to get the community engagement liaisons, as Heather had spoke about, our good connection with the Department of Neighborhoods program. We anticipate a decision about this coming in 2021. So please, if you're interested in joining us for a walk, please let Bill Aboard know and we will get that scheduled. Next slide.
Sarah, just to clarify, your invitation is for task force members, or could they open it up for some of the community that they know. And I'm also assuming you are working with the tribe onto the West Seattle Marginal Way.
Yep, exactly. Good questions, Paulina. At this time, I think we would like to keep it to the community task force, and then we would invite other community members to join us in that January timeframe, if that is appropriate for you all. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so the mobility action plan. This is something that was a big part of the conversation when we did the community outreach in the summertime. I couldn't remember what that was called. And so some of the things that we heard, if you look at the modified mode share goals on the bottom of your screen, those are the mode share goals that we're trying to target for this whole Reconnect West Seattle process. So what we did here is that people are willing and able, if they are able, to reduce their drive alone trips after social distancing is ended, which is something that is going to be critical to making sure that people can have mobility in this area. We have asked the question about work from home potentially after social distancing, and yes, people have agreed that maybe they'll be able to do that. I think a lot of that comes with what their employers are allowing them to do. So that's a lot of the connection with our employer resource group to really work with our large employers to have a better understanding of what their plans are for kind of that COVID recovery time. Buses, was interesting, and I think Mayor Nichols mentioned this when he was having some of his talking points, is that the buses actually saw the most significant decrease of mode share from that pre-social distancing to after, and that's something that we're going to have to work on in partnership with King County Metro about how their COVID-safe processes are happening and when those buses actually can get more open to more passengers. It's going to be a pretty critical conversation and timeline to figure that out. We also did hear that there was increased interest in carpool, vanpool, employer shuttles. Those are all three things that we are going to highly encourage during this time period of the post-COVID and the bridge still being closed. And as well, if people are able to take a bike to try to get to their destinations, we are definitely going to encourage that. Water taxi as well. So this is just a reminder about what we heard when we talked to everybody in West Seattle that were able to fill out the survey or do the online, neighborhood ballots as well. You go to the next slide, Megan. So again, we are totally focused on the same kind of mentality that I've been hearing from you in your previous discussion. And it's just, in my mind, a kind of a scary time frame as well if you're trying to lead a Reconnect West Seattle as a mobility manager. And what do we do with that time frame of COVID recovery and the West Seattle Bridge closed? So some of the work plan components for Mobility Action Plan are definitely working with King County Metro on increasing transit service hours at the appropriate time so that we can get more transit service out there when people are able to maybe not pack into buses, but have a process of that COVID recovery. We're also looking into water taxi feeder service. So how do we get more people to that water taxi when people start opening up and the recovery happening? Our transit mobility program has a Let's Go kind of grant. So they're in the process right now of trying to get that going on so we can really have a campaign to try to encourage people to change the way that they're moving around the neighborhood, and there could be incentives or subsidies that are involved with that to try to get people excited to try to change how they're getting around. Again, we are working quite well with our large employers through our employee resource group and keeping in contact with them, trying to get a sense of what their plans are for opening up. First and last mile connection to try to get people to and from transit or their destinations in terms of bikes or scooter share. We're working with the UW Urban Freight Lab to kind of have a better sense of the urban goods access as well with the high bridge being closed. So that's been an interesting partnership. But a lot of the focus for a mobility action plan is about partnerships with our other transit agencies, our large employers. So we are getting all that kind of wrapped up into a solid work plan for 2021 to 2022 deliverable. If you go to the next slide, please. There are projects within the Reconnect West Seattle implementation plan that were more mobility action plan related, right? So from the beginning, there was a lot about expanded access for the low bridge. We have completed that first phase by opening it up with the placard system, which I'll talk about in the next two slides. We've done a lot of different traffic mitigation work to encourage buses to be able to move more efficiently through some of these detour route areas. And we have some upcoming things that we're going to do too. Some of the things I said about the work plan components that we have coming up, and then some of the partnerships with King County Metro. You know, they do a lot with the car pools and van pools. So how do we really work together on trying to get as much awareness out there as possible so that we can get people to try to change and learn about different modes. The next slide, I think, should be talking about the low bridge. So this is a really fun challenge, I'll say. So, you know, the low bridge is a really important part of our transportation network in terms of the resiliency it brings with that high bridge closed. As you all know, our priority for access has been emergency vehicles, heavy freight, transit, which we've expanded to include van pool shuttles and school buses, because that's kind of the HOV higher occupancy vehicles that we would like to see out there, and then other approved users. So currently, you know, we have the placard system where we have the authorized users and then a subset of other users that are able to access that low bridge. I would like to remind people that I think the Community Task Force had talked about this in the previous segment. If you are not an authorized user to use the low bridge, you should not be on that low bridge. Like, you're violating the policy that we have in place right now. And as we move to automated enforcement, you might not be so willing to do that because there will be $75 citations for a trip one way across the bridge, and another $75 citation if you go back across that low bridge coming up here in January. So I just wanted to make sure people understand that yes, we do have enforcement out there via the Seattle Police Department during AM, PM peak hour, but upcoming you will have additional enforcement because we're moving to that automated photo enforcement system. Currently, we're still in the process of determining the exact policy approach that we're coming up with for the transition to the automated enforcement. Right now, we're kind of wanting to learn more about how citations may reduce those unauthorized users, learn more about the authorized users that are able to do it and what kind of trips they're looking like, and then try to right size it so that we are very conscious of the T5 opening in April of 2021 in a phased approach, and by June, probably fully open. It is very important to the regional economic atmosphere, as well as T5, the Port of Seattle, and the City of Seattle, to ensure that access to T5 is going to be adequate and legit and not have any negative impacts on that new terminal that's going to be open here in 2021. So that's another kind of added on pressure of the low bridge that we're having to work with to make sure we're having a good look ahead for what happens when T5 opens. In terms of the timeline for the low bridge access and automated enforcement, if you go to the next slide, you know, we had the ordinance, council approved the ordinance, mayor signed off on the legislation in September, October. We didn't begin installing the signs. We actually finished installing the signs back in October. You'll see the cameras should be installed. The 2 cameras that we're going to have should be installed the week of December 7th, and then we will be activating the system in January. And again, if you are not an authorized user, if you are an unauthorized user and you're going to use the low bridge at any point outside of the 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., the overnight hours, you will be getting a citation. Next slide, Megan. Questions and answers. I have not been looking at the chat at all, so I will not need to do that, and Michael can help me. That was a lot of information.
You're good, Sarah. That was a lot of information. So yes, if folks have hands, please utilize the digital hand raising function. We'll call on you in the order that they go up. And Deb, I'm seeing your comment, but you just want to vocalize that so everybody can hear it?
Hi, yes, Deb Barker here. My comment, and I also have a separate question. My comment is that the UW, what did I call it?
Freight Lab.
Freight Lab, that's right. Yeah. They sent me an email saying that they have an online survey and I can post that link or if, let me know if you want me to post the link. But they're also wanting to talk to specific larger businesses in West Seattle about their freight access. And again, they're doing a study on how freight is functioning with the bridge closure. So let me know if you want any of their contact information, or if you want that survey. My questions for Sarah and Home Zone projects.
Yeah.
It's great that in some of the, like the West Marginal Way, you're anticipating a decision within the first and second quarter of 2021.
Yeah.
My question for you is, with the projects that are proposed with the home zone areas of South Park, Georgetown, and Highland Park, do you have any priority identified for specific types of projects within different quarters? I mean, you said project to design and delivery 2021.
Yeah.
Can you dial that in any closer
sure
about what you're focusing on first, second, third?
I will say that our home zone team, and we're doing a lot of work with DON with our home zone team, we are really relying on the community to help us prioritize what they think needs to come first, you know? So an example of like the South Park home zone is that we went back out to the South Park Neighborhood Association group, kind of went over what we heard, had a list of projects and some with cost estimates so we could have a sense of what is the most important for you, and do we have enough money to do all those different things that you want to do. So we are really having the community lead how they think the home zone projects should be prioritized. I will say that we are committing to trying to build all of the home zone projects that are coming out of this in 2021, because that is the most critical thing to try to minimize or mitigate the impacts of the closure on those neighborhoods.
Are the priorities on the dashboard?
We don't have the dashboard prioritized.
No, within the new dashboard that you just showed us that talks about, it'd be great to see within that dashboard where that topic or where that particular project is in the neighborhood priority, just so people know what to expect first, second, third. I think that would be really useful.
Okay.
Thanks.
I hear you, Deb. Yep. Sorry, I'm writing a note.
Michael?
Mayor Nichols, I see you got your hand is up.
Okay.
And nothing else in the chat.
Sarah,
yes.
On the transit side of things, the water taxi, interestingly, actually went up in terms of what it's carrying. So that's a good trend. Unfortunately, it's been closed because of some dock issues.
Right.
Do we have any information on when that's going to be resolved?
Yep. Mayor Nichols, I have not gotten the latest from our friends over at King County Metro. I think I have not heard from them this week or last week. But I will get back to you on that and give you a recap on where we are with that. Sorry.
Thank you. I understand some of the floats are needing to be replaced, and that it might have been a bigger problem than at first anticipated. So it would be good to know when it'll be back and running at full.
Sure thing. Yeah.
I do want to note that our friends at the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspection were very helpful to King County Metro to make sure that they could get their shoreline permits really expeditiously. So we're aware of that problem and doing what we can to help it move faster.
Good.
I don't have any additional information though.
Thanks, Heather.
Okay. Any other questions for Sarah on the Reconnect or mobility issues that she has addressed?
And
okay.
I look forward to coming back.
Well,
yep,
stick around because during the discussion, we may get back to some of your issues. But yes, thank you. Thank you for your great work. So the next item is the task force discussion, sort of forward looking. We have 50 minutes, I think, by my clock. We don't have to take all of that. If you don't have any thoughts, that's great. If you do have thoughts, please share them so that the staff understand kind of what our expectations are or what would be helpful to us in continuing in our role. So I will, here are the questions. They're going to be in the chat function. This will be taken down so we can see one another. And please raise your hand if you'd like to address this.
And Mayor Nichols, just before we dive right in, we have just a note in the chat here from our dear friend Chris Arkills, and I just want to read it so everybody can hear it. Related to the previous topic about the water taxis, and says the floats will be replaced this weekend. The water taxi won't have service this Friday, but should be back in service on Monday.
Wonderful. That's great. Okay.
And so, and just acknowledging for everybody, right, this will be continue to be a forum where there are many questions, not all within the jurisdiction of SDOT directly, but we are in constant communication and coordination. And so we appreciate servicing those questions here, and just helps drive conversations that are happening in real time anyway. So
we've just seen it in real time.
There we go. We're getting it done.
So one of my thoughts, and Paulina shares this, I think, is that a monthly, we've been meeting on a bi-weekly or even occasionally weekly basis for the last 5-6 months now. Clearly the repair replacement required a huge learning curve for all of us, and I think we fulfilled our role there. I think we gave the mayor good advice and observations, and I think she made a good decision, and I think she expressed it in a way that the community can access and understand very easily. I think, though, that monthly, at least for the next couple of months, would be helpful. And then it's possible we could go to less than monthly. I'm saying 6 weeks, 2 months maybe. But for the next couple of meetings, I think it would be useful for us to kind of learn about the critical path, see how we're doing on the design issues, because once we get to 30%, things will move into a kind of a different phase. And in the next couple of months, we're going to be seeing the reopening, we hope, post COVID, as the vaccine is distributed throughout the community. So I think it'll be worth us watching those trends, those traffic trends and the like, and staying on top of that, and receiving briefings from SDOT and sharing our thoughts with them. So responding to that or to any of the other questions here, I'm told that I will see little hands up in the corner when people use that function. At this point, I'm not seeing any little hands.
We have a hand up from Deb. I see your hand there. And then Marcy Carpenter.
Good.
How about Marcy go first? I'm tired of going first.
Marcy, are you willing to take the lead on this?
Sure, I can do that. You know, I think it makes sense to meet monthly. These meetings are for us, but they're also for the community.
Right.
And so I think it's important to, to have updates, and for us to get updates. And some of the meetings maybe could be shorter, when we're more or less just getting updates and asking a few questions. I'm interested in what happens with the low bridge. I don't have time right now to be on another subcommittee, but I'm interested in hearing what happens with that as things go forward. As I said, I hear a lot from people who are just ignoring the policy right now, and hopefully the enforcement will, the stepped up enforcement will take care of some of those folks. And also in the ongoing discussions about if there's water taxi service added, if there's bus service added, what those things are like going forward, and then in what happens as we get through the winter season and what impact that has on the, on the repairs. So those are the things I can think of right away. So I'll let Deb go now. I may come back later.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Deb?
Thanks, Marcy. This is Deb Barker. Just jumping back to the questions that we're being asked. I am definitely interested in continuing on the task force. And Mayor Nichols, what you talked about with monthly, but possibly spreading that longer in the future. And Marcy, I love the idea of shorter meetings, but definitely continuing these meetings because it is a public forum. And I wrote down that what am I most eager to learn? How to help us start with this is one of the things that I really want to learn. So that's very key. And a meeting like this in a Zoom, in a public setting, really facilitates that. Ironically, I don't know why, but I think I'm still kind of interested in learning and facilitating perhaps the ST3 and Sound Transit and the West Seattle Bridge and this group and SDOT. There was a huge excitement that was generated by those words by the mayor of talking about ST3 and the bridge and the new bridge and sharing bridges and all that. And wow, that's a huge lift, but I think it's important to keep that topic in the public eye. For example, on December 7th, Monday night, ST3 is going to be having a public meeting with the Avalon neighbor group and sharing some information. So I'm sure that's a great opportunity or a great place for folks to go, hey, what do you think about this whole West Seattle High Bridge and ST3? So that's one topic that I'm definitely interested in also pursuing and facilitating, helping with as a task force member. Thanks.
Anyone else? Deb, let me just ask you a follow-up question. Mm-hmm. And you and I have that same background on Sound Transit, serving on the Citizen Advisory Board, mm-hmm. Along with Aaron. So we're going to do the repair, right? It's going to be open early 2022. Sound Transit is on a schedule, at least theoretically, to open by 2030. To have really full service will be 2035 when the second tunnel is done. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it will shift because of the financial realities of COVID. What does the Sound Transit piece look like to you, given those two things? We're going to repair the bridge. Theoretically, it should last up to 40 years. Sound Transit, on the other hand, is less than 10 years until they open. They're certainly not going to widen a 25-foot wide rail bridge to 150 feet to accommodate general traffic. Mm-mm. And we're not going to have the money in hand as a city to do the replacement if the repair is successful and it's functioning as it should. So what does that look like? What does that conversation look like to you?
I wish I knew, although I'm still a fan of interim bridge, building the Sound Transit bridge sooner so that it can be used before the trains get here. I'm still a fan of that. And then the whole relationship of y'all are working in the same corridor. There's not much room. How can everybody work together, get out of their silos and have this work for West Seattle and the peninsula? So I don't have any specific answers, but those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, I'm sorry, I see Don with his hand. I know you're having trouble looking into the hands, but I see Don Astin has raised his hand.
Great. Dan.
Sorry if I mispronounce your name. By this time you are used to it.
Okay. I would the West Seattle Chamber would like to continue to be involved on the task force. And I think David Beastock asked a really good question in the chat that I kind of want to point out. And I'd like to hear from SDOT what they think on this. But we were brought here to repair or to work on the repair replace decision. And I'm like David, I'm also curious on what SDOT sees the greatest benefit from the task force moving forward. I think that it would be probably impactful that we continue to question timelines and hold, I would say, SDOT accountable, not for the fact that they're going to go derail and decide not to open a bridge, but that it asks the questions that we can take back to the community before the conspiracy theories start of they're not doing anything or nothing's happening. So I'd love to be able to just be a check against what we're being told. And I think that's a powerful piece this task force can continue to do. But what would SDOT want from us?
So let me, unless you have something that you want to say.
You're probably going to say the same thing that I was. So,
well, let's find out.
Let's see.
Yeah, let's find out. I think that first of all, you guys weren't actually convened merely to advise repair or replace. You were convened as folks who live and work in West Seattle and the Duwamish Valley who have an interest in helping SDOT and the city get through this this time. So while I want to underline and make clear that, and I'm sorry about the weird lighting, but I want to make clear that like if you've given all you can give, no harm, no foul. It's all good. I think what I think what SDOT would love to have from you all, from those who are willing to sort of hang tough with us, is your perspective on how we're doing. I appreciate. I mean, I don't hold us accountable if that's the way that it is helpful to you to look at it. We'd like to use your individual networks as vectors for communicating to the broader community, in addition to all the other things that all the other outreach that we do. So I mean, I think and you live and work there, so the things that we're doing, how's it working? So I think that's what we continue to want from you, and what we indeed have wanted from the very beginning. So is that an answer? A satisfying answer?
And that is very consistent with what I heard from the mayor when she broached this idea, that we would certainly have a role in the initial decision to repair versus replace, but also a role in making sure that communities are being heard, that mitigation is effective, and that we are adaptable as the conditions change. So there is a role, but if it's not the thing that you're interested in, that's fine, that's great. Thank you for all the effort you put in, because everyone put in one heck of a lot of work in that first 5-6 months. I do have a comment from Greg Ramirez, who apologizes that it is very loud where he is, so he isn't going to risk commenting orally. He is interested in being able to continue on the task force and to give updates to his community. And he thinks monthly makes sense. He would suggest being open to holding meetings at different times. And he thinks getting updates regarding the repair process and hearing updates on what SDOT is doing regarding traffic mitigation for the communities being impacted would be good. So thank you, Greg.
Greg,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, did we get a consensus? The majority is thinking that a monthly will be a good timing to be meeting. We don't need to get a consensus right now, but I think I would really like to encourage our task force members to fill the reflection form this time. We only got 2 responses, and thank you. You know who you are. Thank you, Deb, for the feedback form and the last one. but these would help us shape the best way that we can for moving forward. For those of you who didn't get a chance to speak, it's really important that we hear from you all. And as Greg and I are planning for the future, we are going to be putting all your voices into the process.
I do want to reflect that the mayor mentioned a number of times that she had read through the notebook that had all of your written comments for her. So that, one, I appreciate the fact that she paid attention to that. But two, I think the quality of those comments were very good and gave her a very wide range of perspectives on the decision that she was making. So thank you all for the thoughtfulness in those comments. I'm not seeing, again, I don't see the hands. So Michael, help me. Are there any hands raised?
There are not any hands raised. And I'm just hearing some echoing in the chat that a monthly cadence seems appropriate.
Right.
But again, a link was just shared in the chat for the reflection forums. If people want to mull and think about what feels appropriate and right to them. Yeah, not maybe we've covered it. We've satiated people's task force appetites.
Can I say something that maybe Sam is gonna hate me for, but it was such an eye-opening for me to be there at the bridge and with Greg. And I think if you guys will be interested in actual visit to the bridge, we should go for it. And it should be an opportunity offered a couple of times because there's a lot of us. But if you're interested, Sam, what do you think about that? I think you really can understand where we're talking is different from the slides to from being there. I know it's extra work for us, but I think it will be super important if it's possible.
Please say yes, Sam. Please say yes.
And Sam, don't feel any pressure because there are 47 of us watching your.
No, I agree that it's a perspective that it's really hard to get elsewhere. I'm not sure we can commit to it right now and sort of how much we're able to do, especially with sort of resurgence of COVID and some of the additional health restrictions. And then we're going to have the contractor demobilizing soon up there. And so I hear it. I recognize it's a desire. I'm not sure what's going to be possible in the near term, but if, we'll take it under advisement. We'll get back in touch with you if we can figure something out.
Great.
And I'll also just say, I think hearing monthly, we've continued to push out information on a regular basis through our blog, through an email list that we push out weekly. And so I think in some ways waiting monthly for the task force won't stop that flow of information, and it'll help us bring some bigger issues that maybe have a little bit more lead time associated with them, or sort of bigger status updates than we're doing in that more regular cadence. And when it's been biweekly or even less, it's been harder to separate out what's the breaking news and what's coming, what bigger topics are coming to the task force. And I think, so I think that monthly sounds like a great from my perspective. And then, again, there's 47 people here, so nobody should feel on the spot to say that they're not interested in continuing. But again, if anybody, this is like a totally fine time for people to feel like they've done their piece, and they can devote their time and attention to other things, and we'll still invite you to the ribbon cutting or the, whatever we do when we celebrate the end of this process. Don't worry that you will be stepping away before you get, brought into the goodies.
There was actually an end of the process. Wow.
Someday.
Thank you, Sam. No, sorry to put you on the spot, but I do think that's a different perspective, and appreciate you considering it. Also, I forgot to say this at the before, but you have quite powerful people here in the task force, and I think that you should also be thinking, how can we support and to elevate the work that you guys are doing? I mean, you're in the city, but how can we be not only representing our communities, but supporting the efforts and getting what we need to as the lobbying necessary and things like that. I think it's important for you to know that you have here 51 very powerful community members. So thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any raised hands, and although it pains me, I think we can adjourn a half an hour or so early today. Do we have the next meeting scheduled? I don't think we've scheduled the next meeting yet.
Hi, everybody. It's Megan Shepard speaking with SDOT. We have not scheduled the next meeting, and I've seen a few notes in the chat that people would like polling on alternate times. We'd like to find a steady cadence for you all so you know exactly when you're meeting, and we can get those planned out for all of 2021 on your calendars. So we'll send out a poll to you all to verify the time of day. I don't think we want to meet in the first week of January, so it would likely be the second week of January that we'd be targeting.
Maybe the afternoon of the 20th. Just kidding. I think
my wife's birthday is January 20th, so I know that I know what happens on January 20th. Very, it's the only day that's written into the Constitution.
Yes. All right, so we'll get that doodle poll or whatever those things are called these days out. I'm a real skeptic that we're going to find a perfect time, but we'll give it our very best shot. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you sometime in January. Happy holidays.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Thanks.
Happy
Thanks,
holidays.
everybody. Cheers.